Dawn broke over the Harding paddock the morning Celia learned that a man's laughter could sound like dismissal. She stood in the Ashworth salon with hay still pinned in her hair, listening to Lord Marcus Ashworth, Duke of Ashworth, laugh at the price she had named, her pride. And in that moment, she understood what her dying father had faced 2 years earlier in this same room. Marcus did not know she was James Harding's daughter when he laughed. He did not know that the woman demanding the restoration of her family's name was the child of the man he had refused with 7 words. The registry is a matter of record, not sentiment. But she would teach him. She would teach him the way she had taught every horse that ever answered to her voice. With patience, with clarity, and with the absolute certainty that some things cannot be commanded, he only earned. By the time the county fair arrived 23 days later, Marcus Ashworth would learn what his grandfather had learned too late: that the Harding family did not beg, did not break, and did not forget. Dawn had barely touched the Harding paddock when Marcus arrived. The air was cold and clean, carrying the scent of wet grass and horse sweat, and the gray stallion moved through the morning mist like something conjured from old stories. Celia Harding stood at the center of the paddock with a lead line loose in her hand, speaking in a language Marcus did not recognize. The horse responded to every syllable, ears forward, steps precise, the kind of obedience that looked like conversation rather than command. Marcus dismounted at the fence and watched. He had ridden out from the estate at first light with the certainty of a man inspecting property that belonged to him. 7 horses, 3 acres, a cottage with a 30-day notice pinned to the door. The debt was 23 days from collection, and when it came due, every animal in this paddock would revert to the Ashworth estate. The gray stallion alone was worth £300 at auction, the broodmares another 200 combined. It was, Marcus had been assured by his uncle Edgar, a simple matter of estate management. But the woman in the paddock was not managing. She was conducting. Celia turned and saw him. She did not stop working. She clicked her tongue twice, said something soft in Irish, and the gray dropped his head and walked a perfect circle around her. Only then did she acknowledge the Duke standing at her fence. "Your Grace," Celia said. Her voice was steady, unimpressed. "You are early. The debt is not due for 23 days. Marcus stepped forward, resting one hand on the top rail. "I came to see the horses." "You came to see your horses," Celia corrected. She walked toward the fence with the gray following loose at her shoulder. "Shall I show you which ones answer to your name?" Marcus frowned. "Miss Harding?" Celia whistled, a sharp, clean sound that cut through the morning air. Nothing moved. The gray lifted his head, looked directly at Marcus with dark, unimpressed eyes, and returned to grazing. The broodmares in the far corner did not even glance up. "None of them, Your Grace?" Celia said. "They answer to mine." Marcus felt the first flicker of something unfamiliar, not anger, but the recognition that he had entered a negotiation already underway and had somehow arrived at a disadvantage. He straightened. "The debt comes due in 23 days. If it is not paid, the animals revert to the estate. That is the agreement your father signed." "My father signed an agreement for feed credit," Celia said. "He did not sign away 30 years of my family's work. The law does not distinguish between the two." "Then the law," Celia said quietly, "is poorly written." She turned and walked back to the gray. Marcus watched her go, watched the way the stallion turned toward her without being called, the way her hand found his shoulder as naturally as breathing. She was 26, he knew from the estate records, unmarried, alone since her father's death 18 months prior. She should have been desperate. She should have been grateful for any offer that kept a roof over her head. She looked like neither. Marcus cleared his throat. "Miss Harding, I did not come here to argue. I came to make you an offer." Celia did not turn. "I am listening. The debt will be forgiven. You may keep the broodmares. The cottage lease will be extended. And the gray?" "The gray," Marcus said carefully, "stays with the estate." Now she turned. Her eyes were the color of winter's slate, and they held no warmth at all. "No." "Miss Harding," she repeated the word. "No." She walked back to the fence, and this time she did not stop until she was close enough that Marcus could see the freckles across her nose and the small scar above her left eyebrow. The gray was bred here, trained here. He answers to Irish because my grandmother spoke Irish, my father spoke Irish, and I speak Irish. He does not know English commands. He does not know crop commands. He knows voice and patience and asking instead of telling. If you take him to your stable, he will not run for you. He will tolerate you for 30 seconds and then stop, and no amount of crop or heel or shouting will make him move. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Then you will come to the estate and train him. No, I will pay you. I do not want your money. Then what? Marcus said, his voice sharpening. Do you want? Celia smiled. It was not a kind smile. I want my family's name on the bloodline registry. Every horse, 30 years back. The request landed like a stone in still water. Marcus stared at her. What? You heard me, Your Grace. My grandmother, Agnes Harding, was the Ashworth Estate's horse trainer for 22 years. She bred the first Donegal Grey in 1799. Your grandfather promised her a partnership agreement, both names on the registry. When the horses started winning, he registered them under Ashworth alone. She asked him to honor his word. He laughed. She left. My father trained horses for your family his entire life and never saw his name on a single entry. I am asking you to correct that. Marcus stepped back from the fence. The morning air felt suddenly colder. Miss Harding, I was not aware of any such agreement. Then I suggest you look, Celia said. You have 23 days. She turned and walked back to the Grey. Marcus stood at the fence, his hands gripping the rail, and watched her mount the stallion with the ease of someone who had done it 1,000 times. She did not use a saddle. She simply gathered the mane in one hand, swung herself up, and settled onto the horse's back as though she belonged there. Gabara guide, Celia said softly. The Grey walked, smooth, unhurried, obedient. Marcus watched them disappear into the mist. The Ashworth Salon was exactly what one would expect of a family with 30 years of racing prestige. Trophies behind glass, paintings of winning horses on every wall, and a silence so thick it felt like a third presence in the room. Marcus stood near the window, his back to the door, and tried to reconcile the woman he had met at dawn with a woman who now entered his study at 9 o'clock in a mended dress with hay still caught in her braid. Celia did not wait to be invited to sit. She walked directly to the chair opposite his desk and sat down, her hands folded in her lap, her expression calm. Marcus turned. Miss Harding, thank you for coming. You sent for me, Celia said. I assumed it was not optional. Marcus moved to his desk and sat. When he had spent the last 2 hours reviewing estate records, and the results had been inconclusive. There were references to Agnes Harding in the training logs, payments recorded for her work, but no partnership agreement. Nothing that suggested the arrangement Celia described. I have reviewed the records, Marcus said carefully. There is no partnership agreement on file. Then it was removed, Celia said, or it never existed. Celia's expression did not change. Your Grace, my grandmother kept copies of every document she ever signed. My father kept them after she died. I have seen the agreement. It is signed by the 4th Duke of Ashworth and dated 1799. It promises equal credit on the bloodline registry for every horse bred under the Donegal line. If you do not have it, it is because your family chose not to keep it. Marcus leaned back in his chair. The morning had already gone poorly, and this conversation was not improving it. Miss Harding, even if such an agreement existed, and I am not conceding that it did, the bloodline registry is a matter of public record. It cannot simply be rewritten. It can be corrected. That is not how it works. Then make it work, Celia said. Her voice was still calm, but there was steel beneath it now. You asked me what I wanted. I told you. This is my price. Marcus felt the first stirrings of irritation. He had expected grief, perhaps desperation, maybe even anger. He had not expected negotiation. Miss Harding, I am offering to forgive a debt of £340, extend your lease, and allow you to keep the broodmares. Oh, that is more than generous. It is compensation, Celia said. It is not justice. Justice, Marcus repeated. The word tasted bitter. Miss Harding, I understand that you feel your family has been treated unfairly. We were erased, Celia interrupted. Not treated unfairly? Erased. My grandmother bred horses that won at every county fair from here to Dublin. My father trained animals that made your family stable, the envy of 3 counties, And when people ask who bred the Donamore line, the answer is always Ashworth, never Harding. That is not unfair treatment, Your Grace. That is theft. The quiet that followed was sharp enough to cut. Marcus looked at the woman sitting across from him and saw something he had not expected. Certainty. Not the desperate certainty of someone with nothing left to lose, but the quiet certainty of someone who knew exactly what she was owed. "Name your price?" Marcus said finally. "My pride," Celia answered. Marcus laughed. He did not mean to. It simply escaped him, a short breath of sound that filled the space between them. It was not cruel laughter. It was the practiced ease of a man who had dismissed something like this before and survived. Celia did not laugh. Marcus stopped. He looked at her face and saw that she had not moved, had not blinked, had not softened even slightly. The sound died in his throat. "You think this is funny," Celia said. "I think," Marcus said carefully, "that you are asking for something I cannot give." "Cannot," Celia repeated. "Or will not. Both." Celia stood. She did not move toward the door. She moved toward the wall where the trophy stood behind glass, 30 years of racing prestige displayed like artifacts in a museum. She stopped in front of the largest case, where a silver cup engraved with the name Donagmore Ash sat on a velvet cushion. "This horse," Celia said, tapping the glass, "was bred by my grandmother, trained by my father, ridden by your family's jockey at the county fair in 1818. First place. The registry lists him as Ashworth's Donamore Ash. But he was never yours. He was ours. And when my father asked your family to correct the record, he was told it was not worth the paperwork." Marcus rose from his desk. "Miss Harding, your grandfather promised my grandmother a partnership," Celia continued. "He shook her hand in the stable yard and told her the Harding name would stand beside the Ashworth name on every horse they bred together. She believed him. She worked for 22 years believing him. And when the horses started winning, he took her name off the entries and told her it was simpler that way. Simpler. As though 30 years of her life could be simplified out of existence." She turned to face him. Her eyes were bright, but not with tears. With something harder. "You said, 'Name your price,'" Celia said. "I am naming it. My pride, my family's name, my grandmother's promise. That is what I want. And if you cannot give it to me, then take your 340 pounds and your extended lease and your generous offer and leave my paddock, because I would rather lose everything than accept compensation for theft." Marcus stared at her. The woman standing in his salon was not the desperate tenant he had expected. She was something else entirely, something he did not have a name for yet. "I will look into it," Marcus said finally. "You have 23 days, Celia replied. She walked to the door, opened it, and left without waiting to be dismissed. Marcus stood alone in the salon, his hand resting on the desk where hers had pressed the wood. And for the first time in a very long time, he did not know what to do next. Marcus granted Celia access to the estate office the following morning. It was, he told himself, a reasonable decision. She needed to review the debt documents, and he needed to prove that the partnership agreement she described did not exist in the Ashworth records. Edgar, his uncle and the family's racing steward, disagreed immediately and loudly over breakfast. "You are allowing a tenant to rummage through estate papers," Edgar said, setting his tea down with enough force to rattle the saucer. "That is not generosity, Marcus. That is foolishness." Marcus did not look up from his correspondence. "She is reviewing documents that pertain to her family's debt. That is not rummaging." "She is looking for ammunition," Edgar replied. "The Harding family has been spinning the same tale for 30 years, that Agnes Harding was promised something she was never owed. Your grandfather dismissed it. Your father dismissed it. And now you are inviting the granddaughter into the estate office to find proof that does not exist." "If it does not exist," Marcus said mildly, "then there is no harm in letting her look." Edgar's expression darkened. "There is harm in appearing weak." Marcus finally looked up. "I am not concerned with appearing weak, Edgar. I am concerned with appearing just." "Justice," Edgar said, his voice dripping with disdain, "is a luxury afforded to men who do not have estates to manage." Marcus returned to his letters and did not answer. The conversation was over, but Edgar's words followed him as he rode to the Harding paddock that afternoon, and the next afternoon, and the afternoon after that. He told himself he was inspecting the horses. He told himself he was ensuring that Celia understood the terms of the debt. He told himself a great many things that were not quite lies, but were not quite the truth either. The truth was that he could not stop thinking about the woman who had stood in his salon and named her price. On the third day, Marcus dismounted at the fence and found Celia working with the gray in the center of the paddock. The stallion was moving through a series of commands: walk, halt, turn, walk again, with a kind of precision that looked effortless but was not. Marcus had ridden horses his entire life. He knew the difference between obedience and partnership. This was the latter. "Miss Harding," Marcus called. Celia glanced toward the fence, but did not stop working. "Your Grace." "May I try?" She paused. The gray stopped immediately, ears forward, waiting. Celia looked at Marcus for a long moment, and then she nodded. "If you like." Marcus climbed the fence and dropped into the paddock. The gray watched him approach with the same dark, unimpressed eyes he had shown at their first meeting. Marcus reached for the lead line. Celia handed it to him without comment. Marcus stood beside the gray, the line loose in his hand, and tried to remember everything he had ever been taught about riding: posture, authority, command. He clicked his tongue. The gray did not move. He clicked again, louder. Nothing. He pulled gently on the line. The horse's head turned toward him, but his feet stayed planted. "Walk," Marcus said firmly. The gray flicked one ear. Marcus felt heat rise in his chest. Not anger, but frustration. He tightened his grip on the line and pulled harder. The gray took one step, then stopped. "Your Grace," Celia said from the fence. Marcus turned. She was leaning against the rail, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. He looked at her. "Yes?" "You are demanding," Celia said. "He answers to asking." Marcus looked at the gray. The horse looked back. "How do I ask?" Celia pushed off the fence and walked toward him. She stopped close enough that Marcus could smell the faint scent of hay and lavender on her clothes. She reached past him and took the line from his hand. Her fingers brushed his palm, brief, impersonal, gone. "Gab ar a guide," Celia said softly. The gray walked, smooth, unhurried, obedient. Celia handed the line back to Marcus. "Say it." "I do not speak Irish." "Then learn," Celia said. "Gab ar a guide. Go forward." Soft on the second syllable. Marcus tried. His accent was terrible. The gray took one step and stopped. "He heard you?" Celia said. "Barely." "He heard you," she repeated. "That is more than he gave you 5 minutes ago." Marcus looked at the woman standing beside him and realized, with a strange jolt of clarity, that she was teaching him. Not mocking, not dismissing. Teaching. "Why does he only answer to Irish?" Marcus asked. "Because my grandmother spoke Irish," Celia said. "And my father spoke Irish, and I speak Irish. The horses know the language because we taught them. They do not know English because no one ever bothered. I could teach them English." "You could," Celia agreed. "But they would not trust you the way they trust me. Trust is not a language, Your Grace. It is a history." Marcus handed the line back to her. "Thank you for the lesson." Celia took it and walked back to the gray. Marcus returned to the fence, climbed over, and rode home without looking back. But the next morning, he returned. On the fourth day, Marcus brought his niece. Charlotte was 7 years old, small for her age, and had been afraid of horses since a stable hand had struck one with a crop in her presence 2 years prior. She had not entered the Ashworth stable since. But when Marcus mentioned that he was riding to the Harding paddock, Charlotte had asked, quietly, hesitantly, if she could come. Marcus had said yes before he understood why. Now Charlotte stood at the fence, her small hand gripping the rail, and watched Celia work the gray with the kind of wide-eyed attention children reserve for magic tricks. The horse moved in circles, responding to words Charlotte did not understand, and Celia's voice was soft and steady, and nothing like the sharp commands Charlotte had heard in the Ashworth stable. "Uncle Marcus," Charlotte whispered. "Why is she speaking funny?" "Irish," Marcus said. "Thus, it is another language." "Does the horse understand?" He nodded. "Yes." "How?" "Because she taught him." Charlotte considered this. Then she climbed onto the bottom rail of the fence and leaned forward. "Miss Harding." Celia turned. She saw the child and smiled, a real smile, warm and unguarded in a way Marcus had not yet seen. "Yes?" Can I pet him? Celia walked the gray to the fence. She stopped a few feet away and crouched down to Charlotte's level. What is your name? Charlotte. Charlotte, Celia repeated. That is a good name. Do you like horses? Charlotte hesitated. Sometimes. Only sometimes? I used to like them, Charlotte said quietly. But then one of them got hit and it scared me. Celia's expression softened. This one will not be hit, I promise. Would you like to meet him? Charlotte nodded. Then Celia stood and brought the gray closer. She held his head steady and gestured for Charlotte to extend her hand. Flat palm, like you were holding a plate. Charlotte obeyed. The gray lowered his head and sniffed her hand. Then, very gently, he lipped her palm. Charlotte giggled. A bright, startled sound that cut through the morning air like sunlight. Marcus watched his niece laugh near a horse for the first time in 2 years and realized, with a clarity that felt like falling, that the difference was not the child. It was the training. Day 9 arrived with rain. Celia sat in the estate office with ledgers spread across the desk and the smell of damp paper filling the air. She had been reviewing debt documents for 4 days, tracing the feed credit back through 7 years of carefully structured dependency. See, Edgar's handwriting appeared on every page, neat, methodical, deliberate. The debt had not accumulated by accident. It had been engineered. Celia was not surprised. She was simply confirming what she already knew. But when she opened the second drawer to retrieve the property lease, she found something else entirely. The partnership agreement. It was folded between 2 property deeds, the paper yellowed with age, but the ink still clear. Celia unfolded it carefully and read the first line. Agreement of partnership between the 4th Duke of Ashworth and Agnes Harding, dated March 15th, 1799. Her hands began to shake. She read the entire document twice. Then she stood, walked out of the office, and went directly to Marcus's study. Marcus was at his desk when she entered. He looked up, saw her face, and rose immediately. Hey, Miss Harding. Celia placed the agreement on his desk. Read this. Marcus looked down. His expression changed. Not surprise, but something worse. Recognition. He read the document slowly. When he finished, he set it down and did not look at her. You have seen this before? Celia said. Marcus did not answer. Your Grace, Celia said, her voice sharpening. You have seen this before. He answered quietly. Yes. When? Marcus looked up. His face was pale. Your father brought it to me 2 years ago. The room tilted. Celia gripped the edge of the desk. What? James came to this study. Marcus said quietly. He carried this agreement. He asked me to restore the Harding name to the registry. I read it. I set it down. And I told him the registry was a matter of record, not sentiment. Celia could not breathe. And she refused him. He confirmed it. Yes. He was dying. I know. And you called his life's work sentiment. Marcus did not flinch. Yes. Celia stepped back from the desk. Her hands were still shaking, but now it was not from shock. It was from fury. You laughed at me in the salon. When I said my pride, you laughed. But you were not laughing at something unfamiliar, were you? You had heard it before, from my father, and you sent him home with 7 words. Miss Harding, do not, Celia said, her voice low and dangerous. Say my name right now. Marcus stood. I did not know you were his daughter. That does not matter. It matters to me. It should not, Celia said. She picked up the agreement and held it between them. My father stood in this room. He was dying. He brought you proof, and you told him it was sentiment. Do you know what he did after? Marcus did not answer. He went home, Celia said. He put this agreement in a drawer. He filed it next to the veterinary invoices and the farrier's receipts. He filed your grandfather's broken promise next to the cost of keeping your horses fed. And 3 months later, he died, with the agreement still in that drawer, unfulfilled. She set the document back on the desk. You asked me what I wanted. I told you. My pride, my family's name, my grandmother's promise. But I did not know that you had already refused it once. To a dying man who stood in this room and asked you for the same thing I am asking now. Marcus's jaw tightened. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me, Celia said, why you said no. Marcus looked at her. and the weight of the moment stretched between them, heavy and unbearable. Finally, he spoke. Because Edgar told me it was not worth the complication. Because the stable's reputation was simpler without questions about partnership agreements from 30 years ago. Because your father was too ill to fight, and I knew he would not press the matter. And because it was easier to say no than to say yes. The honesty landed like a blow. Celia stared at him, and for the first time since entering the study, she saw something she had not expected. Shame. Easier, Celia repeated. He confirmed it. Yes. She did not leave. Agnes had left. James had left. Celia stayed. She pulled out the chair opposite his desk, sat down, and looked at him with the same steady, unblinking gaze she had given him in the salon. You are going to sit with this, Celia said quietly. You are going to sit in this room and think about what you said to my father. And then you are going to decide whether you are the kind of man who repeats that mistake or the kind of man who corrects it. Marcus sat. He did not look away. How long? As long as it takes, Celia said. She stood, walked to the door, and left him alone with the agreement still lying on his desk. The next morning, the agreement was gone. Celia returned to the estate office and found the second drawer empty. She searched the entire desk, checked the shelves, looked through every ledger and folder within reach. Nothing. The partnership agreement had been removed. She knew who had taken it. Celia walked directly to the main house and found Marcus at breakfast with Edgar. Both men looked up when she entered. Edgar's expression was smooth, untroubled. Marcus's was not. Miss Harding? Edgar said pleasantly. Good morning. Where is it? Celia asked. Where is what? The partnership agreement. It was in the estate office yesterday. It is gone this morning. Edgar set down his tea. I removed it. Why? Because it is a family document, Edgar said. And you are not family. Celia turned to Marcus. You allowed this? I did not know, Marcus said. Then get it back. Edgar stood. Miss Harding, I understand that you are upset, but this matter is not as simple as you believe. That agreement, if it is even legitimate, was signed 30 years ago by a man who is no longer alive. It cannot be enforced. It cannot be honored. And it certainly cannot be used to rewrite the bloodline registry simply because you feel your family was treated unfairly. Treated unfairly, Celia repeated. Her voice was dangerously quiet. Lord Edgar, my grandmother was promised a partnership. She was erased. My father asked for that partnership to be restored. He was refused. I am not asking for fairness. I am asking for what was owed. Edgar smiled. It was not a kind smile. And I am telling you, Miss Harding, that what you believe you are owed is not the same as what you will receive. The Harding family has done excellent work for the Ashworth estate. No one disputes that. But excellence is not the same as ownership. You trained horses. You did not breed the bloodline. That was Ashworth. That was Agnes Harding, Celia said. Prove it. The challenge hung in the air. Celia looked at Edgar, then at Marcus. Marcus's face was pale, his jaw tight. But he did not speak. Celia turned and walked out. She did not return to the paddock. She went to the cottage, sat at her father's desk, and opened the drawer where James had kept the copy of the agreement. It was still there, folded, yellowed, untouched since the day he had filed it beside the invoices. Celia unfolded it and read her grandmother's name. Then she folded it again and placed it back in the drawer. She did not cry. She simply sat in the stillness of the cottage and thought about 3 generations of Harding women who had asked for what they were owed and been told it was not enough. Marcus found her that evening. He rode to the paddock at dusk and found Celia on the fence, watching the gray grays in the fading light. And she did not turn when he dismounted. She did not acknowledge him at all. Marcus climbed the fence and sat beside her. The wood creaked under his weight. Celia did not move. Edgar took the agreement, Marcus said. I know. I did not ask him to. I know. I will get it back. Celia turned to look at him. Her face was calm, but her eyes were not. Will you? You had it 2 years ago. A dying man put it in your hands. You gave it back. The words struck like a blade. Marcus felt them land in his chest and stay there. What would you have me do? "I have already told you," Celia said. "My price has not changed. The agreement is in Edgar's study. Without it—" "My grandmother had the agreement and was laughed at," Celia interrupted. "My father had the agreement and was refused. The agreement has never been the problem, Your Grace. The problem is that every Ashworth who holds it gives it back." She dropped from the fence and walked toward the gray. Marcus watched her go, watched the way the horse lifted his head and moved toward her without being called. "If you want to prove you are different from your grandfather," Celia said, not looking back, "and different from yourself 2 years ago, do not bring me a document. Bring me your name. Remove it. Take Ashworth off the Gray's entry at the county fair. Let the horse race under Harding. Not Harding Ashworth. Harding. If your family's name cannot survive being absent from one race, after 30 years of being present on horses it did not breed, then the name was never earned." Marcus stood. "That is not what the agreement says. Not. The agreement says both names?" "The agreement was a compromise my grandmother made because she could not afford to demand more," Celia said. She turned to face him fully. "I am not my grandmother. I am what happens when a family runs out of compromise." She walked to the barn. Marcus stood alone at the fence, the dusk settling around him, and for the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to owe something he could not pay. Day 16 arrived with a crisis. The broodmare Donamore Rose went into labor 3 weeks early, and the foal was breech. Celia had been in the barn for 2 hours when Charlotte arrived at the main house, breathless and pale, and told Marcus that Miss Harding needed help. Marcus rode to the paddock without his coat. He found Celia in the barn, kneeling in the straw beside the mare. While Rose was on her side, her breathing labored, her eyes wide with pain. Celia's hands were inside the horse, her face tight with concentration. "The foal is turned wrong," Celia said without looking up. "I can't do this alone." Marcus dropped to his knees beside her. "Tell me what to do." Celia pulled her hands free and gestured to the mare's head. "Hold her. Talk to her. Keep her calm." Marcus moved to Rose's head and placed both hands on her neck. The mare's skin was slick with sweat, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. "What do I say?" Marcus asked. "Anything," Celia said. "Just keep your voice steady." Marcus opened his mouth and found himself speaking Irish. "Soccer. A store." The words came out wrong, his accent terrible, the pronunciation mangled. But the mare's ear flicked toward him. "What does that mean?" Marcus asked. "Calm, darling," Celia said. She had her hands inside the horse again, her face pale. "Keep saying it." Marcus did. He said it over and over, his voice low and steady while Celia worked. 30 minutes passed. His arms ached. His voice grew hoarse. But he did not stop. And then the foal came. Celia pulled the filly free, cleared her airway, and laid her in the straw beside Rose. The foal was small, wet, and utterly still. Celia rubbed her chest, her hands moving fast and sure. And after a long, terrible moment, the filly took her first breath. Celia sat back in the straw, her hands shaking. Marcus stayed where he was, with his hand still on Rose's neck, and stared at the foal. "She is alive," Marcus said. Celia agreed. "Yes." They sat in the straw together, both covered in blood, both shaking. The barn was silent except for the sound of Rose's breathing and the soft, wet noises of the filly trying to stand. "I could not have done this," Marcus said finally. Celia agreed. "No. Not the foaling, any of it. The horses, the training, the breeding. I know." Marcus looked at his hands. They were covered in blood and straw, and the visceral evidence of something he had never understood until this moment. 2 years ago, your father stood in my study, and I told him his 30 years of doing what I cannot do with sentiment." Celia turned to look at him. Her face was streaked with sweat and dirt, her eyes bright. "That is the first honest thing you have said since I met you." Marcus met her gaze. "The agreement is in Edgar's study. I will have it by morning. But you are right. The agreement is not the price. The price is the name. I will withdraw the Ashworth entry from the fair." Celia watched him. "The trainer's assessment. You said that before dawn in a barn. Men make promises in barns they do not keep in daylight." "Then hold me to it in daylight," Marcus said. Celia extended her hand, not to shake, but to be helped up. Marcus took it and pulled her to standing, their hands clasped, his bloody, hers bloodier. His thumb found the tendon at her wrist. Her pulse ran fast. "She needs a name," Celia said. Marcus looked at the filly, still wet and trembling in the straw. "Harding's Dawn." Celia smiled. It was a small smile, tired and genuine. "Yes." Marcus entered Edgar's study at 4 in the morning. He did not knock. He simply opened the door, walked to the desk, and found the partnership agreement in the second drawer. He took it, folded it carefully, and placed it inside his coat. Edgar was waiting for him at breakfast. "You took the agreement," Edgar said. Marcus confirmed it. "Yes." "It is a family document." "It is a promise," Marcus said. He set the agreement on the table between them. "A promise my grandfather made and broke. A promise my father ignored. A promise I refused to honor 2 years ago when James Harding stood in my study and asked me to correct it." Edgar's expression hardened. "James Harding brought sentiment to a ledger meeting. I advised you to send him home. You did. That was the correct decision. You taught me to call a dying man's request nostalgia," Marcus said. His voice was quiet, but there was steel beneath it now. "You taught me the vocabulary of dismissal. That vocabulary built a debt, stole a document, scouted and kept a family invisible for 30 years. I am done speaking your language." Edgar stood. "Your father would not have—" "My father died at the racing grounds, watching a horse he called Ashworth," Marcus interrupted. "I told James Harding the same lie 3 months before James died, holding proof I refused to read. I will not be the third Ashworth to choose comfort. You are relieved as racing steward." Edgar stared at him. "You are making a mistake." Marcus disagreed. "No, I am correcting one." He picked up the agreement and walked out. The next 5 days passed in a rhythm Marcus had never known. He returned to the paddock every morning, and Celia taught him to ride the gray properly. Not as a duke commanding, but as a rider asking. It was harder than anything Marcus had ever done. Day 1. 40 minutes of failure. And the gray tolerated him for 30 seconds and then stopped. No amount of heel or voice or gentle pulling made any difference. "You are demanding," Celia said from the fence. "He answers to asking." Day 2. Marcus tried softer. The gray walked 3 steps and stopped. "Better," Celia said. Day 3. Marcus said, "Gab aragade," in his terrible accent, and the gray walked forward. Marcus's face showed the expression of a man who had been obeyed by hundreds, but never once answered. Charlotte, watching from the fence, called out, "You stopped looking like a duke and started looking like a person." Day 4. Marcus rode the gray through a full sequence. It was imperfect. His accent was still wrong. His timing was off. But the horse tolerated him. Not obedience, patience. Day 5. Marcus completed the sequence without error. After, Oni dismounted and stood beside the gray, who lowered his head to graze. Not commanded. Proximity. Celia watched from the barn door. The trainer's assessment, the animal was ready. Both of them were. The county fair arrived on a clear October morning. 400 people gathered at the racing grounds, the air filled with the smell of roasted chestnuts and the sound of children laughing. Marcus arrived in full riding kit, carrying a leather folder under one arm. The gray was already in the paddock, calm and steady under Celia's hands. Edgar was absent. He had resigned from the racing steward position and left the estate 3 days prior. Marcus had not stopped him. Marcus walked to the steward's table and placed the folder on the desk. Inside was the registry correction. Every Harding horse, 30 years of entries, names restored. But he did not present the document first. He turned to the steward and said, "I am withdrawing Donogmore Ash from the Ashworth racing entry." The steward blinked. "Your Grace?" "The horse was bred by the Harding family," Marcus said. "Trained by the Harding family. The Ashworth name has appeared on this bloodline for 30 years. It was never ours to use." A murmur ran through the crowd. Marcus ignored it. He turned and walked to the paddock fence where Celia stood. "The entry's open," Marcus said. He held out the reins. "Under your name, Harding. Not Harding Ashworth, Harding." Celia looked at the reins. She did not take them immediately. "You are giving up the race." "I am giving up a claim I never earned," Marcus said. "Yes, there is a distinction. The county will talk." The county should have been talking for 30 years. Celia took the reins. She mounted the gray with the same ease she had shown the first morning Marcus met her. The horse answered, not to a duke's withdrawal, but to the voice that had raised him. She rode. The gray ran under Harding for the first time in the bloodline's history. Celia did not win. The horse was still calibrating to the course, and 400 people were watching a woman ride at the county fair for the first time. But she finished. Third place, under her own name. Mrs. Drummond, the housekeeper who had served Agnes 30 years ago, stood in the crowd and wept. She gripped the arm of the woman beside her and said, "I told her I would see it. I told her." Marcus watched from the fence. He had the position Celia had occupied for 3 weeks. The inversion complete. She was in the ring. He was watching. After Celia dismounted and walked to him, the gray followed at her shoulder. "Third," Celia said. "Under your name," Marcus replied. She repeated it. "Under my name." She looked at him. Not the trainer's assessment this time. Something else. "2 years ago, my father came to you with the agreement. You said sentiment. Today, you withdrew your name from a race to make room for mine. What changed?" "You did not leave," Marcus said. "Agnes left. Your father left. You stayed in the salon and did not laugh and did not walk away. And I had to sit in the room with what I had done." Celia's expression softened. "That is not romantic." "It is accurate," Marcus said. "And accuracy is what I owe you, not romance." Evening came quietly. Celia was settling the gray in the paddock when Marcus arrived. He climbed the fence and sat on the top rail, her position from 3 weeks ago. Celia looked up at him from the ground below. "My solicitor has canceled the debt," Marcus said. "The paddock lease transfers to your name. Freehold." "You cannot buy what you owe," Celia said. "I am not buying," Marcus replied. "I am returning. The debt was manufactured." "And the agreement?" "Framed," Marcus said. "In the estate office, where James left it 2 years ago and where I should have read it properly the first time." A pause stretched between them. Celia walked to the fence and rested one hand on the rail below his boot. "I need to say something I have not earned the right to say," Marcus said. "Then say it without the preamble," Celia replied. Marcus looked down at her. "I dismissed your father. I used a word, sentiment, that I learned from a man who spent 30 years making your family invisible. I cannot undo that conversation. I cannot give James back the 3 months between my refusal and his death. But I can tell you that the woman who stood in my salon and named her price is the first person who made me hear what those 7 words actually sounded like from the other side of the desk. And I am not standing on this fence because I want forgiveness. I am standing here because I do not want to be the man who said those words. And you are the only person who can tell me whether I have stopped being him." Celia reached up. Her hand found the back of his neck and pulled him down from the fence toward her. He slid off. An ungraceful descent, a duke dismounting badly. She caught the front of his coat. He stumbled. She held him. The kiss happened standing, his back against the fence post, her hands in his collar, the gray watching from a few feet away. Not the choreography of a man claiming, but the choreography of a woman deciding. She held him in place. He stayed. When she pulled back, her face was close enough that he could count the freckles across her nose. "You have not stopped being him," Celia said quietly. "You are in the process of stopping. That is different." "How long?" Marcus asked. "As long as it takes," Celia said. "The same patience you learned from the gray." Spring arrived with new grass and the sound of Charlotte's laughter echoing across the Harding paddock, and the paddock had expanded. Marcus had signed the adjacent acres to the stud over the winter. A brass plate now hung on the stable door. Harding Stables, established 1799 by Agnes Harding, breeders of the Donegal Grey. Inside the estate office, the partnership agreement hung framed above Marcus's desk. Not behind glass in a trophy cabinet, but on the working wall where it faced him every morning. Beside it, in a smaller frame, was a note in James Harding's handwriting, a feed schedule for Donegal Ash written the week before he died. Marcus had found it in the stable ledger. He had not filed it. He had framed it. Charlotte rode a pony trained by Celia, calling out Irish commands with the confidence of a child who had forgotten to be afraid. Marcus sat on the fence and watched. Celia worked the gray in the center of the paddock, being her voice steady and sure. "Uncle Marcus," Charlotte called. "Why is there a feed schedule on the wall?" "Because a man wrote it while he was dying," Marcus said. "And the horses are alive because he did. Some things deserve to be where people can see them." Charlotte considered this and returned to her pony. Autumn arrived with the county fair. 1 year after Celia had ridden the gray to 3rd place, she returned. This time, she won. 1st place, under Harding. Marcus stood at the fence, the position she had taught him, the position of someone who watches. After Celia dismounted and found him, the gray stood between them, calm and steady. "First," Celia said. "Under your name," Marcus replied. She repeated it. "Under my name." She looked at him. "You are staring." "I am observing," Marcus said. There is a distinction." He rested his hand on the gray's neck. Her hand was already there. His hand settled over hers, on the horse. "Your grandmother would have liked this," Marcus said. "My grandmother would have won the 1st year," Celia replied. "Your grandmother would have won everything." Celia spoke quietly. She did. It simply took a generation to collect. The paddock stretched before them. Charlotte's Irish echoed off the stable walls, wrong tenses, confident delivery. The brass plate gleamed in the afternoon light. The name on the door, the name in the record, the name on the horse. Everything, finally, priced correctly.